Okay. Is everybody back? Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay. Suppose another university, uh, they are also offering admission into their PhD program. And this, just for the sake of argument, we say they also want to consider the same three aspects like academics, entry test, and interview. But for example, they decide that we are not going to give admission like this. They say that we will, in a sense, do it like this. We would just make it 0.2 x1 plus, let's say, point, let me just say 0.5 here, 0.5 x1 plus, let's say, 0.3 x2 and plus 0.2 x3. So which means for the second university, when they are going to take students into their PhD program, suppose they have decided they want to give 50% weight to academics, right? And 30% weight to the entry test and 20% weight to the interview, because it's up to them to justify why they are giving more weight to academics and less weight to interview. But suppose they have come up with something like this. Now, this is also a linear combination. This is also of the form a1x1 plus a2x2 plus a3x3, okay? But here, as you can see, the weighting scheme is different, okay? So we would say that if y1 in the form of 0.3x1 plus 0.3x2 plus 0.4x3 is one linear combination, then y2, using the same variables, but with a different weighting scheme, is another linear combination. So therefore, one university may be using this linear combination for their admission, another university may be using another linear combination. Still, a third university may be using another linear combination. So when you change the weights, okay, then the linear combination would change. The idea would remain the same, but the linear combination would become different. So in a given study, which would be the main idea in PCA, we would see that we would be interested to know whether only one linear combination would be enough to describe information in our multivariate data, right? Is it enough to combine information on all the variables in the form of just one new variable? Or is it required, or it would be justified that we use more than one such linear combinations? Okay. तो उसमें अब दो चीजें हैं, या तो ये है कि एज अ रिसर्चर, इफ यू आर एन एक्सपीरियंस्ड रिसर्चर, so you can decide on your own that I need to combine all the information into just one, or maybe two, or maybe three, if you have some reason. But if you have no idea in advance, this is exactly what we call exploratory analysis. So if you have no idea in advance how much new linear combinations are sufficient for describing information in my original data, then you will leave it to the procedure itself to tell you, for example, what are the appropriate choice of these linear combinations. Okay, so this is exactly what we are going to do in our discussion. Initially, we would not put any imposition. We would say, okay, let the data tell us whether the summarization should be in terms of just one linear combination or whether it should be more than one. But in our discussion, each linear combination would be called a principal component. Okay, each linear combination would be given a name. Another thing that we should remember about PCA, that although when we carry out PCA, as I have mentioned over here, okay, originally when you consider data on p variables, the technique of PCA would give you as many new linear combinations as the original one. And if you are having 50 variables in your data set, the technique of PCA using this transformation that we call PCA, initially it would also give you 50 new variables, right? But the purpose would not be to consider all the 50 variables of the 50 new variables, because if that is the case, then there is no particular advantage of PCA, right? One of the purpose of PCA is to see whether the information originally available in terms of a large number of variables can be described by a smaller number of new variables or not. अभी जो example मैंने आपको ये दिया कि for example if you have data on 3 variables x1 x2 x3 by constructing an aggregate like this, जिसको हम linear combination कहते हैं, one of the purpose is that you want to summarize information originally available on 3 variables. You want to summarize it in the form of just one new variable, right? In the language of PCA, this particular process in which you represent the information originally available in 3 variables and you reduce it to, for example, 1 variable, this is given the name of dimension reduction or dimensionality reduction, right? Remember this keyword because I'll be using this word quite often in my discussion: dimension reduction or dimensionality reduction. So whenever I use the word dimensionality reduction or dimension reduction, actually what I'm trying to say that is it possible that the information originally available in large number of variables can be described in terms of a smaller number of variables, right? If yes, then we have got the objective of what we call dimension reduction. So therefore, PCA helps to describe information available in large number of p variables. For example, this p can be as large as 100 variables or 500 variables or whatever, in terms of a much smaller q number of new variables, right? The PCA would help us to obtain a smaller number of new variables, y1, y2 up to yq, where q is less than p का मतलब ये है, where q is much smaller than p. As I said, if the original variables are 100 in number, and the PCA is telling us that the information available in the 100 actual variables can be represented in terms of 2 new variables, just for example. So you are reducing the dimension from 100 to 2, okay? So effectively हम ये कहते हैं कि representing the information of 100 variables in terms of 2 new variables is actually what we call dimensionality reduction. So this is one of the main purpose of PCA, that it tells you that you can actually achieve. So therefore, on the basis of that, these are the 2 main objectives of PCA. Whenever you want to carry out PCA, these are the 2 objectives. The first objective is dimensionality reduction. As I said, dimensionality reduction actually means that you are posing a question that is it possible that the number of variables to be considered can be much smaller than the original one? If the answer is yes, which the PCA would be actually helping you to get, then you say that I have got the objective of dimensionality reduction. And when I will be carrying out PCA, you will actually learn how this dimensionality reduction is actually achieved. But dimensionality reduction would not be the only objective of PCA. The second important objective is interpretation. As a result of the PCA, when you carry out analysis, you will get new variables, which would not only be smaller in number, but they would also have a nice interpretation. They would have nice meaning, as I would be able to tell you with the help of an example, okay? When I will be running PCA, तो ये आंसर मैं फिर वहाँ पे आपको दूंगा कि what I mean by interpretation. But keep in mind that not only you would be able to get dimension reduction, which means the number of variables to be studied would become much smaller than the actual one. But the new variables, the new smaller number of variables, just हम pieces कहेंगे, principal components, they would have some very nice interpretation. They would give you some new insight of the data, which was previously not visible. So therefore, this new interpretation would be also quite useful in your further analysis, right? How we get these two, this would be explained with in the context of an example. Okay, the last thing, before I actually show you how the PCA is actually run, this thing is also very important. PCA is not an end by itself. Rather, it's a means towards an end. Do you understand what does it mean? Hello?
जी बिल्कुल sir.
When you are carrying out PCA, keep in mind that PCA may not be the ultimate end of your research, or it may not give you the ultimate answer for your research question, but rather it would be a means towards an end. It would help you to lead you into that direction. So most of the time, PCA may be a part of a much broader analysis, okay? PCA would be something like an initial step of a much broader analysis. As you will see later, the results of PCA can be a useful input for factor analysis. It can also be a useful input for discriminant analysis. It can also be a useful input for regression analysis. In the last semester, we studied econometric models. And I hope some of you will remember that I had told you that one of the remedies of multicollinearity is PCA. किसी को याद है?
जी बिल्कुल sir.
Right? So here I would be able to show how that remedy is actually achieved. So when you are using the results of PCA in subsequent analysis like econometric analysis or regression analysis, then we say that PCA is not an end by itself. It is means towards an end, okay? So with the help of the results of PCA, you can have a better idea of your next step of analysis. So therefore, PCA should be considered as something like the initial part of the broader analysis rather than a broader part of the analysis. Okay. Before I can actually start PCA, is it okay if we go for a 5 or 10 minutes break so that we can have our prayers and then we come back and reconnect? G.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes sir.
मेरा ख्याल है कि it would be appropriate if we just go for a 10 or 10 minutes break. आप suggest कर लें, and then we come back, and after the break we totally go for SPSS demonstration rather than just further theoretical discussion. So I will end the session right now for a prayer break of कितना ले लें? 10 minutes, okay?
15 minutes, sir.
Okay. It is 2:14 right now. So we will reconnect on 2:30. आप कोशिश करें कि 2:30 को सब reconnect हों so that we can complete the rest of the discussion. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you sir.